Good morning and welcome to Citizen Extra. I am Ann Kiguta. Thank you for staying with Citizen TV this morning, and we are taking you across the country. We're following for you breaking news as it happens. We'll be live for you here in the capital, where IEBC is shortly expected to convene a meeting with presidential candidates or their party agents. We'll be telling you who's there and what they'll be discussing very shortly. We're also taking you to Nyeri and Eldoret a little later, following the campaigns for the October 26th presidential elections, and our reporters are standing by for that. In Kisumu, we'll be following developments there for you, including the World Tourism Day celebrations that are being marked in that county this morning. But first, let's start with bringing you a dose of politics. And as I mentioned earlier, IEBC had invited presidential candidates and or their party agents for a stakeholders meeting today, a key meeting happening some 29 days to the presidential election. And of course, you are aware of the concerns that have been raised by NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga. As of last night, it was unclear whether his team would be willing to sit down at the table and negotiate on the terms in which we should go into the next presidential election. But our man Francis Gashuri is there for us this morning and joins us now live. Good morning, Francis. We understand the meeting was scheduled to kick off at 9 a.m. Who is there, and are there any signs that there will be successful talks this morning?
Very good morning to you, Ann Kiguta. Bomas of Kenya is the place to be this morning, at least insofar as the preparations for the repeat presidential election are concerned. And yes, the meeting has been called by IEBC. It's a consultative session with presidential candidates or their agents to come and try and iron out any differences that would be there insofar as the preparations are concerned, and also to make their proposals insofar as how well they think IEBC can manage the repeat presidential election to avoid the mistakes that were identified by the Supreme Court judges in the successful presidential petition filed by NASA leader Raila Odinga, and thereafter the directive by the Supreme Court to hold a repeat presidential election within 60 days. Those 60 days are lapsing on the 31st of October, and IEBC has already identified 26th of October as the date for the repeat presidential election. And yes, IEBC Vice Chair Connie Nkadha Bucha is already here, together with Commissioners Paul Kurgat, as well as Dr. Roslyn Akombe. And none of the political parties or none of the presidential candidates, that is Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta, are here, or their agents. However, all preparations have been done, including the room where the meeting is expected or is scheduled to take place. So we continue to wait for the arrival of the agents of the two presidential candidates or themselves, if they will get an opportunity to come here. And also, once they get here, the agenda of the meeting will be outlined. But for now, it remains a wait-and-see game on whether the agents of the respective presidential candidates, that is Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, will be making their way to the Bomas of Kenya. But at least 3 of the IEBC commissioners are here, as well as I've also been able to spot a short while ago Commissioner Jubilee is also here. So at least 4 commissioners from IEBC are already here, Ann.
Francis, before we let you go, let's talk a little bit about what is at stake. Here is a looming presidential election, and basically, at least from the side of NASA, they feel none of their demands have been taken seriously, and the likelihood of them being met perhaps even slimmer. What is at stake?
At stake is a situation where the repeat presidential election will be held on the 26th of October or not. Remember, the National Super Alliance has outlined a list of 11 irreducible minimums, including a change of the printer for the ballot papers, i.e. they don't want Al Ghurair to print the ballot papers for the repeat presidential election. Also, NASA is demanding that there is a change on the election technology management insofar as the company that is dealing with it is concerned. They don't want OT Morpho to manage the Kenya Integrated Electoral Management System. And those are the 2 main main irreducible minimums, if you may like, because some of the other concerns they were raising have been addressed by IEBC in a response to a letter that had been written by Norman Magaya, the CEO of the National Super Alliance. This is a response that came from the chairman of IEBC 2 days later, and this includes inclusion of the agents and IT technologists from the two main presidential candidates to observe the proceedings in terms of how the results are being transmitted, and also the parties, the agents, or the candidates and their agents to have read-only access to the servers and the entire election management system. However, yesterday when we posed that same question to NASA leader Raila Odinga, insofar as the response that came from the IEBC chairman on the question of the irreducible minimums, he called it too far, too short, and the commissioners are now making their way to the meeting room. I don't know whether we can be able to grab a quick one with the commissioners. Commissioner, good morning, and I don't know whether how ready are you for the meeting, and have you gotten a response from the?
We are very ready. They are expected any time now.
Have you gotten any confirmation from them that they are going to be here?
We are sure they are here. They are coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Asante. And Commissioner Paul Kruget and Roslina Kombe making their way to the meeting room, and we wait to see whether the agents of the respective political parties will be, or the respective agents of the two presidential candidates will be making their way to the Bomas of Kenya. And to come back to your question, at stake are the issues that NASA has raised insofar as the preparations for the repeat presidential election are concerned. And yesterday when we posed that question to NASA leader Raila Odinga, he said that the response from IEBC was way far short of the demands that they were making, and they will continue to push for the reforms that he wants at IEBC, including the exit of 11 officials that NASA team says were used or participated in the process of bungling the presidential election on the 8th of August. So, not yet there in terms of meeting the demands that NASA is asking for. But on the other hand, Jubilee says that NASA is shifting goalposts and looking for to erect roadblocks to ensure that the repeat presidential election is not conducted. So it's still a push and shove kind of a situation on here.
And just before we let you go, Francis, we know very clearly what it is the NASA coalition team wants, but it's not so clear what exactly Jubilee wants, to the extent that here we are expecting a meeting at State House a little later this morning, one that could very well chart the way forward in terms of electoral reform. And at the same time, as late as last evening, Senate Majority Leader Kipchumba Murkomen from the Senate said that they will be attending IEBC's meeting this morning, and they have issues that they too want to address. Do we have any idea what it could be that Jubilee wants to put on the table this morning?
Talking to some of the Jubilee members and part of the team that is expected to come here, their concern, they say, is that IEBC is bending backwards too much to the NASA demands, and that it is being derailed from the core business of preparing for the repeat presidential election. In their words, and to quote Senator Kipchumba Murkomen, IEBC should act independently, and though it is obliged to listen to what the respective parties and agents are saying, or the proposals by the candidates, it is not mandatory that they comply with them. So they are insisting that IEBC conducts its job independently, without coercion, without being intimidated, without being bullied by either of the presidential candidates. So with those two antagonistic kind of positions, you can expect quite some scenario and situation here at the Bomas of Kenya. But ultimately, the commissioners are hoping that there will be a solution insofar as the preparations for the repeat presidential election are concerned, so that the team can get underway, and that project team that was appointed by the chairman can get underway and prepare for the repeat presidential election, because time is quickly running out, bearing in mind that we are only 29 days or so to the date that IEBC has identified for the repeat presidential election.
All right, thank you, Francis. Francis Gashuri reporting for us live from the Bomas of Kenya. Let's now take you live to Nyeri, where our Martin Munene is following campaigns by the Jubilee team. Of course, you're aware that Jubilee has basically, segmented itself into various teams that are going countrywide, asking residents to give President Uhuru Kenyatta yet would it be a third then term in office, as Jubilee would have it. He's joining us this morning, Martin, with the latest. What can you tell us about today's campaigns? Where will they be going and what is their message?
All right, like you've said, you're getting us live from Nyeri County, and where I'm standing outside one of the busy bus parks in the town, and like you can see behind me, businesses are open, but there's a lot of complaints with people saying that the whole electioneering period is affecting their businesses, and one of the things they really want is that there's going to be a speedy resolution to the whole matter so that their businesses can go back to normal. And I'm going to just talk to one or two residents here who are going to be helping us understand how they feel. One of the things they're saying is that there is need for both sides of the political divide to engage in a talk, especially with the IEBC, so that what has been set as the election date does not change, because they are saying they are ready to come out and vote strongly in support of their preferred candidate, of course, here being a Jubilee County, Jubilee zone, being Uhuru Kenyatta. But maybe just to sample some of the views, kindly help us understand. Please start with your name and help us understand. Today, Jubilee and NASA should be meeting the IEBC officials. Do you think it is important that both sides of the political divide go and have that meeting, and what are some of your expectations, please? And kindly look at the camera as you talk.
My name's Justice Derek Wagari. I'm the Deputy National Secretary General, Matatu Owners Association in Kenya. At the same time, I'm the Secretary General of Mount Kenya and Nyeri County. In fact, from the time when our elections were nullified, we have been having big problems, not getting enough work. And as I'm talking today, I'm a member of 4NT SACCO and also Chakana and some other SACCOs in Nyeri. In fact, we don't have, the work has gone down. Businesses are not doing well as they are supposed to be done. Even how we have the vehicles, we are going in the streets. Since we operate in the most of the parts of Kenya, we are not getting some good job. So we would ask our national our parties who are supposed to meet with the national with the NBC to try and do it today, so that these things can be eliminated, and we have elections where we shall be having our work to resume as we have been doing.
And maybe to try sample another person's view on the same, kindly if you can just come forward, one of you, just help us understand, kama kijana labda unaona maoni yako ni yapi, unataka hao watu wakutane ama what is your take?
Mimi naitwa Alex Maina. Kama kijana nataka sana wapatane, sababu biz imekuwa chini sana na attention iko juu, alafu zaidi vijana wanatumiwa vibaya. Sababu naweza kuuliza swali, yani mimi naweza funga job nene, hakuna kitu nilikuwa napigania, tena naambiwa ati nikapigane karusha mawe, nikipigwa risasi si mimi naumia, wazazi wangu ndio watalia nini, alafu watoto wao hawapatikani mahali. So wakiongea wasikizane ni poa, twende election tunaiongoja, tutapiga kura na mambo irudi kama kawaida.
Sasa, and maybe labda mtu wa mwisho, kama kuna kidogo some of them are so afraid of speaking, but what the feeling here is that one, there is need for people to have this conversation, especially they feeling that NASA should not fail to attend that meeting, because it is crucial that they iron out whatever differences they have with IEBC, so that elections can be held on the expected date, which is October 26th, because people here feel that continued delay in the elections is affecting their businesses. And of course, like you know, Nyeri town has a lot of business people, and many people here get their supplies from Nairobi, and they're saying that with this whole thing there, it is not safe for them to go to Nairobi to get their supplies, and once they go there, they're told that suppliers are also now bringing things, waiting for the election period to be over. And Kiguta, that is the situation here in Nyeri County. I am Martin Munene, back to you in studio.
Thanks, Martin, for that report. Let's just catch up with one more bit of live report for you and take you straight to Eldoret, where equally there are expected to be SAM campaigns by the Jubilee Brigade there. But let's listen to Paul Wanyama and area residents on their expectations this morning ahead of a key IEBC stakeholder meeting that was called to resolve some of the issues that are pending ahead of October 26th. Wanyama, good morning. What can you tell us?
A very good morning to you, Anne, and I'm here in county number 27, the city of Champion, specifically here at Bomain. Here, Anne, I'm with the Nandi Senator Gerard Gay, whom we want just to discuss with about the issue of IEBC and NASA Jubilee. You remember they are meeting today, and we are asking, many Kenyans are asking questions. Are they really going to meet today, or we are also going to see this meeting maybe not happening? And without wasting time, let me talk to Senator to tell us, Senator, what do we expect of this meeting today?
I think I have seen that the IBC have been calling for this meeting, especially to review on the conditions that were discussed with various stakeholders. I'm aware there is a letter they had written to NASA, and they articulated some of the issues that they want to address. So we are looking forward that the IBC keeps the country up to date on what they are going to do, especially after going through the Supreme Court judgment, and ensure that there is free, fair and credible elections as per Article 81 and 86 of the Constitution of Kenya, so that we have a more conducive environment. But we want to expect also that especially our competitors, the NASA, should also not be giving too much conditions, so that we become impediment, because if some of the conditions are now, they cannot be implemented within a particular time frame. Remember, 60 days is a very short time. One of their demands is the service provider for KIMS, MOF Safran. We are aware that officials led by CEO Rachaloba that needs to be sent home. But if you take, and I want to quote what the Supreme Court said, they ordered IEBC to the way it is constituted to do a fresh elections. So we expect, let us stop intimidating them, let us stop coercing them, so that we ensure we allow them time also to prepare. Because if you replace some officials within the time, 60 days will elapse, and then we might slip into constitutional crisis, and that is what it seems our competitors are geared to. But what we want to see, IBC want to tell them they should do their work, because they are an independent institution. We must respect them, because they are the only mandated that they can do an election. And therefore we want to urge also that we tone down and ensure that I've heard some saying there is no election. Under Article 38 of the Constitution, every Kenyan has a right to vote, and to vote to the party of their choice. So there is nowhere under the sun, even in this country, even the president himself cannot deny a Kenyan from going to an election, unless you want to sabotage, unless you want to ensure there is no election by sabotaging the entire process. So let us allow Kenyans, as per Article 38, Article 10 and Article 3, to exercise their democratic right of voting the candidate of their choice. And I think we should not be singing, we should not be singing based on our where we think that and you know the history has it, when you are a player you are not supposed to order a ref, but in this case one of our competitors from the other side, NASA, are the ones ordering the referee around. So we should stop that and allow the IBC to do their work. We are aware there were challenges according to Supreme Court judgment that did not allow the process to be somehow credible and fair. But what we want to tell them, that they should now be ready. And as Jubilee, we have always insisted that we are ready to move to Parliament and Senate and ensure that we amend some of this law. We remove manual. Germany went for manual. Kenya is likely to go for manual.
Maybe, Senator, we've seen you Jubilee side being not much. You are defending IEBC so much. It means you don't have so much conditions.
No, we are not defending IEBC. What we are defending is the constitutionalism. We are defending the independence of all institutions. If IEBC officials have to be removed, if the NASA follow the law, and some of these officials are removed from office, we support, because we respect independence of the institutions.
Thank you very much. And those are views from Senator Chirchir from the source of champion there in Nandi. And as you've heard him clearly, is that they are expecting that this meeting will be held and ensure that they solve some few things so that the election can be held on 26th of October, so that Kenyans can do what they are supposed to do, and these elections or politics put to rest. And
John, just before I let you go, what can you tell us about campaigns for the presidential election there? I mean, Jubilee at least has still been, putting up a significant show, if you like, going to its strongholds largely in this round to whip up support for President Kenyatta. Are we expecting any campaigns taking place in Eldoret?
Yes, we are likely to maybe to have those big campaigns, especially from Jubilee leaders, and as per now, residents here in this region, especially North Rift, and the mood of campaign is really not there. People seems to be tired, and as you know, there's no money circulation. Businesses are on a low level. People seems to be tired, and maybe once people they are just waiting for the president and his deputy to be in this region, maybe to spur that spirit up again so that they can go for this election. But as per now, the region is cool, silent. Each and every person is trying to do whatever he can, maybe just to put food on the table in the evening. But for now, we are still waiting. You can remember just last week we had the deputy president here last week when he met the Luya community people in his home in Sugoi, and he also went to Nandi. But still, the mood, that spirit that we normally see in Kenya, that high spirit we have not seen. Only here in Eldoret, especially in Uasin Gishu County, we have only seen that political, especially business class in this region are only people who we are seeing together, coming together, trying to contribute their money. These are just business class. They are saying we are not going to wait for the president to come and give us the money for us to be able to campaign. What they are doing is that they are going to put their machineries on the ground, to use their money, to use their vehicles to ensure that President Uhuru Kenyatta goes back to theaters.
All right, thanks, John, and we'll catch up a little later. And joining me now in studio to discuss the politics of the day, beginning with this expected meet between IEBC and presidential candidates and or their party agents. To the far right is Bishop Cornelius Courier of the Eldoret Diocese. Next to him is Daisy Amdan, who is a women's rights advocate. Daisy, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay, lovely. Next to her is Brian Weke. He is a governance expert. And right next to me is Senator Chirchir County Aaron Cheriot, and you're all welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Bishop, I want to start with you because you're heading to Bomas, is that right? You will not be heading there. Have you been part of any IEBC talks and consultations, and what do you think of today's meeting that was supposed to kick off as we speak?
Yes, yesterday we had a meeting with IBC officials led by Chebukati, and we listened to what their planning are, and it seems to be positive. The only problem they seems to have is to bring up the two big parties together on the table, and we are praying that today they may succeed. That's the only challenge they seems to have, and we have to pray for them. Because so long as there is no dialogue meeting, is a stumbling block for all this process. So, but they seems to be working positively.
All right. What did you think was positive from the meeting? What did you think IBC is getting right?
First of all, they seems to have adjusted some structures to fit in the demands, some of the demands of the NASA. But as you are all aware, NASA demands deeper than that. But they have done, at least the positive thing I saw, they have done some adjustment. And what they are waiting for is also to listen to both sides. That means NASA and Jubilee. That's a very important for the step to make, for the whole process to meet, because each side has a demand. And this demand has to be put on the table together. That is their hope, and also the hope of Kenya people and hope of us also.
All right. And I should say at this point that we had also invited Kiminini legislator Christopher Malwa to the program, and we certainly hope he'll be able to join us. Daisy, talk to us about these stocks. Is it coming too late in the day, or is there still time to salvage the situation?
I think there is time to salvage the situation, but I also think that it's important that we realize that this is not just about the political contestants, because the Constitution reminds us that the sovereign power belongs to the people, and that power is exercised through the ballot. Therefore, IEBC have a responsibility to Kenyans, not just to the politicians. They have a responsibility to Kenyans to deliver a process which is free, fair, credible, transparent, you know, and verifiable. Now, I think that for me, the bigger problem is not so much the political class, because there's been a lot of focus on, you know, one section of the political class, you know, making demands. But I think that as Kenyans, we must make demands on the electoral management body, because it is the electoral management body that has been found to have failed in its responsibility in delivering a process that would have delivered or at least manifested the will of the people. Now, they remain in contempt of several orders of the Supreme Court. They insist that there are no changes that are going to be made, and therefore, even for the players in the game, there are questions that arise. Why this continued refusal to accept responsibility that your work did not meet muster, and therefore we need to see certain changes that demonstrate the recognition that they actually failed in certain aspects, and that they are willing to make that they are willing to make the changes that will then guarantee that the process is in compliance with the Constitution and the laws, and that it is a transparent process.
You've talked about it being beyond the political class, and so a meeting like the one Bishop attended yesterday brings together Kenyans really of you know, all walks of life, the religious, the civil society, etc. To that extent, is IEBC then reaching out to the right groups? IEBC should be speaking to Kenyans. There is nothing that stops Chairman Chebukati, because remember that IEBC is an independent body. It is not supposed to be dictated to by anybody. They understand, or they should understand, their responsibility. Therefore, IEBC should be speaking to Kenyans. They should be telling us, yes, we recognize that this went wrong, and towards that end, these are the changes that we have made. This is what we are doing towards ensuring that the process is free, fair, and credible. Because it's not just for the politicians to understand the process. The Kenyans are the ones who are voting. It is us citizens who will be voting. So we need to understand the process. We need to understand what is going on, and the assurance and the guarantee that we are not going to go back to the ballot, and then again the process is nullified simply because they have not done their job. So IEBC need to build the trust of Kenyans as well, not just the political class. Stakeholder groups,
but this now has been framed as a contest between Jubilee and NASA. It is not.
And the rest of us as
and we are spectators in this whole thing, trying to bring all of them to the table so that they don't collapse our country. And I think that that is out of order, and I think that IEBC really must take their responsibility seriously, because the Constitution lays that responsibility upon them. Okay.
Do you agree, Weke, with Daisy's sentiments? And if you do, what then is the import of, or the weight of today's meeting, if we were to work with the premise that this is not just about the candidates, it's about the 40 million of us as well?
You know, I largely want to agree with Daisy. You know, we have really dichotomized our minds. Even IEBC itself, that is charged with the responsibility of ensuring that universal suffrage applies, that one man, one woman, one vote applies. Still again, they're playing into these games of NASA and Jubilee. If you look at the Supreme Court ruling, and really everybody have heard them saying it is a historic ruling, it has never happened in Africa, then it is a clear indictment, even though the court did not say that they did not find anybody culpable, because that was not before court. Because the issues of culpability and criminal responsibility, there is a higher threshold. So if the court in itself, and it's in its wisdom, decided to annul the election, then we ought to come back and look at, and honestly say, these were our weaknesses. And call Kenyans and say, look here, based on the Supreme Court ruling, and you can see it has actually mentioned a number of individuals. Even though, and I've been hearing people saying, oh, there is no culpability on the part of these individuals. It's true, because the court, the matter before it was not checking the culpability. But the mere fact that processes were not followed, the mere fact that Supreme Court said that laws were not followed, the Constitution was not followed, there were individuals who are charged with the responsibility of ensuring that that particular process is followed. So for me, the most important thing is actually not necessarily bringing in NASA and Jubilee, and we are seeing clear grandstanding between those two individuals, is how do you build trust to the people of this country?
With the ordinary folks.
Absolutely.
Okay.
How do you ensure that you tell Kenyans that we will clean house and will be able to conduct elections that will stand the test of time? And the Supreme Court is on record saying that if you do not follow the law, we will still annul it.
Okay. Senator, it's unfortunate that we don't have a political challenger for you here. Nonetheless, I'm sure the rest will do the heavy lifting for me this morning. Okay. Are we expecting Jubilee to be present at this morning's talks, and who will be representing you?
Yeah, just like any other time, we'll be sending our representative. The letter that we got from IBC was that either the candidates or their agents are supposed to be present, at least to the best of my knowledge. I know that our leadership from Parliament, that is majority leadership in National Assembly and the Senate, will be present together with our technical team from the Jubilee Party. Will be part of a team that is going to meet IBC, because we are very clear in our minds what we want to achieve. We are law-abiding citizens. We do appreciate that there were challenges with the election. There are many things that we do not agree with what was said by the Supreme Court, but then because we live in a country that is governed by rules and laws, we'll show up at Bomas this morning, listen to them, place our demands. Of course, like the question that you had asked Gashuri earlier on in the morning, is that what are some of the key things that Jubilee has an issue with? And one of the key things that really bothers us as Jubilee is the appearance of bending to the whims, you know, of us from the political class by IBC is something that bothers us. I thought, and it's not even about what I think, it's actually in the Constitution, that IBC is an independent institution that exercises power delegated to it from the people of Kenya. So whatever decision that they make, so long as it's in the good interest of the people of Kenya, they should stand by it, stick to it, see that they do and execute their mandate. But of course, we do realize that this is an extremely political country. Things can go wrong when you don't carry along the players with you. So we do understand sometimes when they keep on calling these meetings and saying, okay, please Jubilee, come on board, NASA, bring your people, and we have to speak and listen to each other. We understand where they're coming from.
But of the, you know, if we were to go by the response letter that NASA sent to, I beg your pardon, IBC sent to NASA, and the different things that they're looking to do, including inclusion of the UN and the Commonwealth in certain processes, shuffling ROs, hiring new POs, etc. What are you taking exception to that equals bending to the whims of NASA? Because we're coming from the point where, like it or not, the court gave NASA legal and political capital. That things did go wrong, so IBC was bound to make some changes.
You see, as political players, what is expected of us is we can make demands and say, this is what we expect from you. Either you must reshuffle your POs, you must do ABCD, but to what extent, if it appears that every time NASA places a demand on IBC, they are given a positive response, then we begin to get worried. For example, we know that IBC, as presently constituted, have the capacity to do fresh elections. When NASA goes ahead and says that you must include the international organizations like you, and they keep on quoting, now you wonder, under which law? Because IBC is fully given the mandate by the people of Kenya to do elections. When they keep on telling them that we do not want you to procure services from Al Ghurair, we wonder, you are not the procuring manager at IBC. Please place your demands and say, we want to be clearly told, because I have listened to counsel for NASA, and on many occasions I keep on saying that one of the reasons why we don't want Al Ghurair is that they printed extra ballot papers. IBC was so clear on the reason why they needed to print those extra ballot papers. It's about contingency planning, something which maybe NASA does not seem to understand. The thing that they should have been asking is, we want to be clearly told, if this time, what is the number of ballot papers that Al Ghurair will print? If they print excess, what is the custody of those excess ballot papers, so that they don't end up being stuffed into ballot boxes?
Right.
You know, you raise genuine concerns so that you are addressed by IBC and told, oh, if that is your fear, this is the alternate plan that you are the plan that you are putting in place.
But to them, all their concerns are genuine. Let me just get a response on the points that you said. Daisy, you look like you want to say something.
No, I do agree with the senator to some extent that you know, you cannot keep nitpicking. But let us remember that some of the fears that were raised before we actually went to election have turned out to be the nightmare that now has invalidated, you know, the presidential election. Therefore, we cannot just throw out the demands that are being made by NASA. I can understand why Jubilee are resistant, because remember that the court has found, the court found that IBC you know, did not follow the law, the constitution, and that there were irregularities and illegalities. Now all these conspired together ended up favoring Jubilee's candidate, okay? And of course, NASA candidate feels that they were disadvantaged. So then you begin to read some kind of suspicion. Therefore, while I do believe that there are contingency measures that can be put in place by IBC, but at the very, very least, minimum, there are some minimum demands really that are reasonable and should be met. For instance, you cannot tell us, as Kenyans, and now I'm not talking about the politicians, you cannot tell us that nobody is going to take responsibility. Even in any organization, any company, if culpability has been found that within this organization there are things that went wrong that delivered a bad result, you cannot then say, okay, fine, we're just going to polish up and nobody is going to take responsibility. What happened? Why do they remain in contempt of court?
Should that be the subject of DCI investigation?
It should be, in fact, because these are all.
I mean, should IBC then not wait for such investigations to be done in order to act?
IBC can suspend officers, okay? Because there are some officers that are also on record saying that they are not going to resign, which I think is very unfortunate, because we are setting a very bad precedent here in Kenya, where people refuse to take responsibility for wrongs that have been done under their watch.
Ezra Chiloba?
For instance, you know, and for me, what I'm saying, as an act of good faith, because stepping aside does not necessarily mean culpability, but we should have seen the DPP move in. I am surprised that NASA have not sought court orders, or rather, you know, to compel the DPP to initiate investigation, regardless of if nobody specifically was found culpable. The fact that the court found that there were illegalities, that means that there's some criminal stuff that went on. That should have prompted the DPP to actually initiate investigation.
Bishop,
so it is, you know, it beggars.
I think I'd like to go back to listening yesterday what the IBC shared. They seems to have acknowledged there were some mistakes. When somebody acknowledges the mistakes and they are ready to correct, I think in all ways we should support them.
What mistake did they acknowledge?
For example, the signing of return, I don't know, a form, what is
34A, B?
Yeah, whatever you call it, because I don't know. That one they acknowledge seems. And there are other mistakes which they acknowledged themselves yesterday. And they say they have already corrected those small little mistakes. That was
Can I say some? Can I ask?
Yeah, just one more question. What about criminal culpability, like Daisy has talked about, that certain people did not strictly follow the law and therefore should end up in jail?
They did not say that, but the only thing I want to repeat what they say, they acknowledge there was some weakness.
Do you think that should happen?
Yes, they follow, but now I think what is happening is if we follow the strict, like she has said, the DDB should follow those cases. But on the line of this process of election, the correcting of the mistakes can be, the election can go on.
Can I say something?
Yes.
You know, for me, I find it strange that even as the religious leaders, that you would not even push, at least even for suspension, because we're not saying, you know, jail them, suspend them. One of the things I think, Anne, we need to say is this. Elections are about logistics and security.
For a minute there, I thought you were going to say numbers.
No,
then the show would be
no. It's about logistics. It's about ballot papers getting to the right, you know, polling centers, in a secure manner.
Right.
Voters voting, the tallying being done in, you know, because it's amazing how we absolutely forget how to count when it comes to elections, and then those. The tallies being relayed in an accurate manner. So we must stop trying to make it seem like it is, you know, some kind of science, mystic science, that needs only certain quality of a person to do. We have election experts in Kenya, we have ICT experts, we have people of integrity. Really, that's what we need. Now, for me, that the religious class continue to advocate for covering up.
No, we don't advocate.
Because for me, I imagine that you should be the voice of the people to actually make certain minimum demands. Whereby it is not about correcting. You cannot call them small mistakes.
No, I'm only reporting what they tell us.
But for me, okay, what is the position of the
position of the church? We always stand, we condemn the wrong things. We cannot change.
Okay.
But when you are listening to somebody for the sake of peace in the country, you have to listen, even if somebody is bad or wrong. So now we are able to move to another side. And that's why we are insisting of a dialogue to say, when we listen to IBC, we have to listen with all parties. Not that we are ready to go to support the evil thing. No way. No way. We cannot support it, but we have to listen.
No, but are you ready to push for certain minimums?
Yes. We have to make sure that what they said yesterday in their own mouth is done.
Does the church have a set of irreducible minimums for Kenyans to IBC to be able to deliver a credible, free, fair, transparent, and verifiable?
Yes. When you are beginning a dialogue, you have to listen every piece of it. Then now we say, okay, what is the way forward? So the next thing is to come to the way forward. Otherwise, you cannot condemn all in umbrella these fellows are bad. No.
So right now you're at the stage of listening, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes.
Brian.
I think, Anne, let's be very honest, and I want to be extremely candid. You know, and I want to agree with Daisy to a larger extent. There are different levels for different institutions. The mere fact, and really it's not even mere, it's a serious issue, that the Supreme Court nullified the presidential election is a clear indication that there is something somewhere that went wrong.
Very wrong.
Extremely wrong. Read about, you'll find probably only 3 countries in the history of the world that the Supreme Court has actually annulled the presidential election. And you know, it is our chance as a country to clearly ensure that we have reforms within electoral processes. You know, I want Senator Chirchir, who came to Parliament just the other day, his son, or daughter for that matter, if they were to be able to inspire Kenyans, then one man, one vote has to apply. Now you can't tell us that based on Supreme Court ruling, that you have sat down and reflected and thought through, and you're now initiating systems to deliver a credible election. There has to be culpability internally, and they say, Anne, here you messed up, and for this reason, for this coming election, you have to step aside. Here we acknowledge this is where we went wrong. Now there is a memo written by the chair of the commission that is in the public domain, and it raises very fundamental issues. An internal memo. when you hear
allegedly,
no,
as the commission would have it.
No. The commission has been on the record that yes, that was their memo. Yes, it was written by the chairman, but they are yet to respond because they have internal processes. You know, that particular memo raises fundamental issues that would ensure that we safeguard the will of the people. Number one, the chairman says there was an account in his name that was logged in nearly 10 times and he was not aware. That is a serious issue. How do they respond to the public on that regard? There were a number of polling stations that were receiving results, yet the chairman, which is the commission, was not aware. Who was actually the returning officer for the presidential election was not aware. There are a number of stations that never sent Form 34As. Because how do you sit down and purport to deliver a Form 34B, yet you have not been able to deliver Form 34A? Because Form 34A is not a bra. It is a form that says you got this in this polling station, this in this polling station, and that is how this Form 34B is tallied to ensure that...
and so therefore there's enough for them to act on.
Absolutely. Okay. And for me, if you ask me, one of the key things that they have to do, because it's about confidence levels with the public. Number one, they have to tell us that internally, forget about DPP, forget about DCI, because that's a long process. I saw the DPP has already written a letter. We want internally IBC to act and say, the CEO, this was culpability on your part, step aside. Not really resignation. The ICT director, same applies. So and so, same applies. Then,
so largely you agree with NASA's demands then?
You see, that's where we are going wrong. We are calling them NASA demands.
No, but they have formally been put forward by the NASA coalition. So what else can you call them?
And I think I would want to amend
reasonable demands.
Absolutely. I think
those are your words. NASA calls them irreducible.
No, but I think where I would fault Daisy, because Daisy is really on Bishop Corrill's case. I think the civil society, together with the church, needs to sit down. I think at some point we had something called a multisectoral forum. And we have our own as Kenyans. Irreducible minimums. Because it is about ensuring that we strengthen the electoral processes in this country. And by the way, I've had this narrative of numbers and the processes. It is numbers output. They are only determined by the process.
Let me, I can see you're literally shaking in your seat to give a response. We're getting to the top of the hour, so briefly.
You know, when I listen, anyway, I don't want to be drawn into all this discussion about whether these are NASA or personal opinions of Brian and Daisy. But the more I listen to them, the more I hear Otiende Amolo, the more I hear Orengo. It's the same language that NASA keeps on speaking. You know, our view is totally different from theirs. Actually, as Jubilee, we feel much more aggrieved than even them by IBC, because what we feel is that this was a genuine win, that we went out, we sought the vote of the Kenyan people, they voted for us, but due to their own inefficiencies as an institution, we end up going back to the voters.
But yet you don't show it.
Listen, and that is the main point of departure. You know, you have to, this is politics right at the middle of it. What NASA are doing, and through certain voices, and sometimes some of the things that maybe Daisy and Brian are saying could be so sincere about them, but they don't realize that they are falling right into the traps of NASA. To us as Jubilee, we are very clear in our mind that NASA does not want an election. What they want is to plunge this country into a crisis. Then we are called by the international community and told, please listen, you need to save the country, or we need to preserve peace. Then please speak. Go back to parliament, create a caretaker government. That is NASA's endgame in all these things that you hear people saying. Our problem is, we keep on saying, despite the fact that we know there were mistakes, if we are given sufficient assurance that the same mistakes that IBC committed in the August 8th election are not going to repeat, and we safely pass through the October 26th election, immediately after that, that is why the president said we'll revisit. We want to revisit because we want to know from Ezra Chiloba, these officers that he hired for Kisauni, the one that he had for Likoni, and all these 55 constituencies where we told they were given a genuine Form 34B to fill, but they returned to the commission fake papers. At the end of the day, In fact, what we are looking at, because we had a parliamentary group yesterday as Jubilee, is that people are by and large saying one of the things that we'll need to revisit is the whole process, not only at IBC, from IBC to the Supreme Court, you know, the issues that are being raised about the registrar, because we want a clean and fair process. As we know, there was a scheme that was well orchestrated and they found us flat-footed. But should we pursue this narrow interest of saying, please fire this one, reduce that other one, we end up having the same problems. One of the reasons IBC was not able to live up to his expectations is because we kept on interfering with their own internal processes. As busybodies and people making demands, going to court each and every other day, they didn't have sufficient preparation. Take an example. Let me give you a very clear example. Briefly. You remember the incident of the PO at one of the polling stations in Mandera, the issue where they were saying a full scap was found in one of the Kim's kit. You know, it's a simple issue of non-preparation of your officers. This officer went to a training. They were told that this is how the Kim's kit work. On election day, he has filled his Form 34A. Before feeding it, he says, let me try and see first how it goes with this full scap before sending on Form 34. The minute he captures it, he doesn't know that this thing, you cannot reverse it. It ends up on the IBC portal. What does NASA do? They rush with it and say, this is a fake form that was generated at IBC headquarters. So that is why I entirely agree with the Supreme Court when they say that whatever was experienced at IBC were systematic institutional challenges. Not a particular individual saying that I want to subvert the will of the people. It's about a returning officer who was not properly trained. It's about somebody who maybe wanted to subvert the will of the people of Kenyans, you know. And
yet
when you look at all these things,
I'm sorry, I have to cut short. In saying that you take a significant departure from even the top party leadership, who have largely maintained that IBC did nothing wrong. Absolutely. It was a clean poll. But we have to go.
No. That is not our demand. That is not what
has been your position.
No.
In fact,
later when we return, I'll tell you what.
You'll tell me something else. Okay, no problem. And I can see the Kiminini legislator has walked in, so we'll be hearing NASA's position very shortly. But of course, Parliament is in session this morning. You remember yesterday, pretty much debate was suspended on all other things to focus on the ongoing stalemate. These pictures right now are live from the National Assembly. We're taking a breather. We're back with more on Citizen Extra after this.